Good evening, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. We're pitching a, what's the word I'm thinking of? We're pitching a double header today, and the last one was a complete smashing success, and this one's going to be too. I am sitting here with a good guest, a good friend of Mr. Cody Fallon. So, Cody, how are you tonight, man?
Oh, I'm doing all right, Jeff. Doing all right. Just
Good.
Another day in paradise over here.
So I see for the camera, you're sitting in your shop right now.
I am. I'm a one-man show. I've got at the moment 1.5 bay shop, and I do everything out of here just by myself for the most part. And the shop is my office.
Okay. How long you been doing this?
So I went out on my own here. It's been about 2.5 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah, about 2.5 years. I've been doing my own thing, and it's been a wild ride, man. I've learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, but here we are. So.
Where are you located?
In Newark, Ohio.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep,
good.
Newark, Ohio, man. That's about 30 to 40 minutes east of Columbus. So, yeah.
Right. It's not too hot there today.
It's high 80s. It's probably 88, 89 degrees. It's a little warm, but this time of year we're used to it by now. So
that's about what we got right here right now. Today is around 83. So
well, give it a couple months and we'll be complaining about the colds.
So you said you stepped out on your own recently. Where were you before that?
So I started my career probably as most mechanics do, just out of high school. I went to trade school, C-Tech. It's local here.
Okay.
For diesel mechanics, their diesel mechanic program. Graduated there with my diploma for that. While I was there, I got an apprenticeship program with a big construction company down here, Kokosin Construction. They're the biggest in the state, actually, as a truck mechanic for their truck shop. So spent 8 years with them working on all their trucks. They had a fleet of over about 800 pickup trucks and probably about another 300 or so big trucks. They're way bigger than that now even, but yeah, they were a good company to work for, but like I said, I spent 8 years with them and just was kind of getting burnt out, wanted something a little different. They were a good company to work for and stuff, but I wanted to move over to heavy equipment. And ultimately, they ended up telling me they had me where they wanted me. Wasn't going to switch me over to the heavy equipment side. I can respect that, but wasn't quite what I wanted at the time. So I ended up jumping ship to another local construction company, George Eigel Company, on their heavy equipment. And I spent 5 years with them. And after 5 years, I was just, I don't know. I think I was burnt out on turning wrenches before I ever went to them, to be honest with you. But they were pretty unorganized in how they did stuff. Great company to work for. They took very good care of me while I was there. I've got nothing bad to say about them, but just the way that they did things, it just didn't quite go with how I like to do things, I guess, for lack of better words, I guess, rather. But
a stressful situation? Like, is it like was it the pace or?
No. So I'm a pretty organized person. I'm probably a little OCD even, but the biggest issue was their parts department, man. Like we did, we would look up, I would go out, look at a piece of equipment, okay? And I would go through, look up parts, send in a requisition with part numbers and everything to our parts department at Eigel there. And then they take care of order and everything and getting the stuff to the job, whatnot. And it was just issue after issue there and just always setbacks and stuff. And for the most part, they never got worked up too much about stuff. But in my eyes, I'm out there working in the field and, I'm trying to keep equipment going and, keep everybody happy, make sure their AC's working, their heat's working, all that kind of stuff. And when you just run into issues like that over and over and over again, and there's, I was always putting suggestions out there on how we could, maybe make things more productive, make things better, easier for everybody. And I don't know, sometimes they'd be receptive to it, and then other times it's just in one ear and out the other. And that, after 5 years of that, I came home one day and I brought my laptop in the house and typed up an email to the vice president and my supervisor. And I was just like, hey, like, I'm going to go ahead and put in my 2 weeks. Like, I just had enough.
So what
And
was let me stop you there for a second. So what was your day to day? Like, did you get into a service truck and
oh yeah,
go from broken piece of machinery to broken piece of machinery? Right?
yes.
Yeah.
So I would, my boss at the time, he would usually send me an email of my list of stuff to start on for the day. I would get it usually around midnight or so, which I'm asleep, so I don't even know what I'm doing for the next day until I get up for the morning.
Right.
It's not all the time, but most of the time it was that way. And then basically, I would go out. I'd start on that list of stuff, going out, checking out equipment. I stocked a lot of parts and stuff on my truck. A lot of the stuff you see, I mean, it's just same as working on cars. You see the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
But then after I would get that list done, I would get with him and wait for my next place to go. And that was another thing too. I mean, which they had too much on his plate, and I would end up waiting. I mean, sometimes for an hour or something, before I'd have another place to go to. And I have trouble doing that, especially if I'm on the clock for somebody. It's just I'd rather bust my butt, get everything done that I need to get done for the day, and get
Right.
home to my family, man. And I don't know. It was just very unorganized, and it wasn't. Trying to think of a good way to put it, but they never got too excited about stuff, and that's okay for some people. I mean, they had some decent guys and stuff there. They were probably a little undermanned, but another thing that they weren't big into, which really bothered me, was training. They did little to no training, and that was something I really pushed for hard while I was there. And they just, I don't know, they just weren't into it. They would act like they were, but it would
So
never.
there's lots of road service guys that I've talked to. The beef they might have is like that they'll start almost the same time every day, but they might not know when they get home that night.
Oh
Like
yeah,
what time. Yeah.
yeah. So, and actually, I can't say I always started the same time every day. It depends on what I might have been going to for the next day. I'd like to, whatever list that I would get, you know, in my email that morning, I would like to try and get the jobs before they started, to try and get stuff checked out and fixed, so I don't have to go look for equipment and stuff like that while they're running it and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, I might get home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or I might get home at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Usually, usually it was somewhere, you know, around a certain couple hours there, anywhere from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. roughly. But yeah, you never know for sure. I mean, because you just don't know what you're going to get into for the day. And that can be
And
frustrating sometimes too.
working outside in the cold in the wintertime.
That's the worst, man. That's the worst. I'm not a fan of the winter. My wife and I, we've talked a lot about, potentially moving south, someplace where it's warmer year round. But at the same time, though, too, I feel like we haven't had much for winters here for the last, 5 or so years, maybe even longer than that. But not nothing like it was when I was a kid. I grew up right here, so. But yeah, and not only that, I mean, working outside in the 95-degree sun, no shade, middle of a job site, nothing but dust and stuff. Like it wasn't an easy job by any means.
No,
But
I've been there, done that. I don't. Yeah, I didn't love it.
yeah, I did not love it either, and that's something I would not go back to. I don't think. I mean, the money was good, the freedom was nice. Freedom was definitely nice, being able to especially, I had myself in a position with them where they didn't worry about me. I could They could let me go and I would get stuff done for them. Even, even those times when I'm, waiting on the next thing to do, man, I would always take care of people, whatever people might need on the job, look at stuff that's sitting at the time, whatever, just whatever I needed to do to stay busy. But
Yeah. Yeah. So then, so you had always worked on equipment. Now, when you started your own business here, is that, did you stay working on equipment or have you kind of transitioned down to cars and trucks?
so I have transitioned to just cars and pickup trucks. At first, when I left Eagle, I didn't have a game plan. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. Figured I'd take a break for a little while and kind of regroup. We had some money saved up and stuff, and just figure out what I wanted to do. And I figured at the same time too, I could turn some wrenches on the under the table in my shop here at home and see how that went or whatever. Well, it just it really started taking off, and I would also get those calls. People want me to work on equipment. People want me to work on cars, pickup trucks, diesel trucks, whatever.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I decided I needed to just stick with one or the other. You know, paying for service information and getting parts and stuff like that for automotive stuff and equipment and whatnot. It's too much. You can't do all of it.
When you said that your former employer was not big on training, like what's the training like available in the equipment side of things?
More than what you'd think. I know Ohio Cat here in Columbus. They do a lot of different classes and stuff like that. That the little bit of training that Eagle did do, that was usually their go-to. They would, unfortunately, we would end up doing one or two of those classes every winter when things are slower. But that was really about it as far as that goes. But they would always book us for like the same classes that we had the year before. So it got to the point with me where, I had told my boss actually probably the year prior to me leaving, like, hey, like I've already done this. I just did this class last year and stuff like it, not that it, maybe wouldn't have been a good refresher either way. I can't even remember what the heck the class was now, to be honest with you, but they didn't put much effort into trying to find anything else. Cummins, they have a very good online school that they do. They also do some training at their facilities and stuff. From what I understand, you have to have so much of the online stuff completed first before you can even book any of that stuff and the hands-on training. So I never got to that point. In fact, they didn't push any of the online training or anything. They didn't even know about it. As a matter of fact, I actually introduced them to it because I knew about it from my time at Kikosing. Kikosing did do a lot of training and stuff for us, but yeah, that part of it was pretty disappointing to me because I mean, this as well as I do, Jeff. Whether it's the automotive industry, anything mechanical related, repair related, the technology and stuff is changing every year, and
You never get ahead of it, right? You're always behind.
no,
You're not even with it. You're always behind.
the best you can do is know. You can't know all of it, unfortunately, but the best you can do is try and know a little bit about everything, and then have the right
Yeah.
service information and stuff to get you get you where you need to go. But yeah, I felt like the few years within, I felt like the first couple years I was with Eagle, like I was just felt like I was getting behind.
Mhm.
I'm just not staying up to date with stuff, and like I did with Kikosing. I mean, they were great about training. We did weeks of training every single year, but
So did they, if you struggled with Eigel at a job because you didn't have training, did it affect your pay in any way, or just your frustration level went up and that was enough?
frustration,
Just frustration.
level. Yeah, no, the pay was good. They took good care of me. I mean, I could do whatever the heck I wanted to do there, pretty much. I mean, They, like I said, I've got no complaints. They were a good company to work for. It just, for my personality, what I like and stuff. I mean, I want to continually being pushing myself forward and getting better if I can, if this is what I'm doing. And I didn't feel like I was in that realm while I was at Eigel. It was just, and one of the older guys there told me once, we were talking about doing preventative maintenance and stuff. Eigel did very little to no preventative maintenance on stuff. And he told me once, he says, well, it's not preventative maintenance here, it's just panic maintenance. And it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. It's stuck with me ever since then, because it was. I mean, you just fix stuff as it broke. You didn't try and catch anything ahead of time there.
That's so
But
frustrating because it's like when I was coming up through equipment, everybody was like, the buzzword was downtime, 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 right? Because you're paying an operator sometimes to stand there and watch the tech fix the machine. Right?
yeah,
Now, it's if the operator was the one that broke the machine, but if you go in and you have like a completely preventable failure because preventative maintenance wasn't done, now you're paying a tech to be dispatched out there to fix the stupid thing in the field, which normally takes more labor than doing it at the shop. And then secondly, you're paying the operator to stand there and watch the mechanics sometimes. Sometimes
right.
you get them another piece and move them on, right? But I never understood that when I still see, and even after I got out of my training from college, which was in heavy equipment, and then I go to the real world, and you see all these places, people that have this leased equipment or older equipment, and they're doing no preventative maintenance on it at all, none. Like if it's the preventative maintenance was the circle check that the guy was supposed to do on the machine in the morning, and that was it, right? And then if it broke down, we tried to get it fixed as fast and as cheap as possible because that thing had to work. I never understood how they couldn't grasp the concept of like, this is costing us so much more money. But what I saw the cycle became is the more that it cost them, the more they just had to charge on the next job and the next job and the next job. And it became an expense versus like preventative maintenance is just a cost. You know what I mean? The difference between a cost and an expense. They couldn't grasp it. And that's why I think so you probably run into some fleet managers in your day, right? They get a bum rap sometimes because everybody thinks like that they're a-holes and don't want to spend money on this and don't want to spend money on that. But they're given sometimes an unrealistic budget to operate like a fleet, and that's it. They have to work within that. Did you run into that or?
The a-hole fleet managers, yeah. That was part of my reason, but behind leaving Kokosing there, I did not get along with their fleet manager, and he was the one that ultimately didn't want to move me out of where I was at. But no, I don't know. What little bit that they would let us in on, I guess financials and stuff. I always heard, and especially at Eigel, that we were always running under our budget for repairs and stuff every year. There might have been a year or two maybe where we might have went over a little bit, but there was never a time where they were basically telling us to slow down on fixing stuff or don't do any preventative maintenance or anything like that because they don't have a budget for it. I think there must be a stupid profit margin in the construction industry because just the amount of money and stuff that I saw just wasted over the years, man, it's just unreal. I'd like to have just a fraction of it, but I yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was very odd to me because, like I said, I started out at Kokosing, dude, and the way that they operate, they're all about preventative maintenance. I mean, they did federal inspections on pickup trucks every single year, which didn't have to be done, but they wanted to do yearly federal inspections on them just to keep up on everything. And my supervisor there at the time, like his theory was like, if you see something on that truck that isn't going to last for a year, you need to replace it. Like if it can't go until this time next year when it has its next federal inspection done, you replace it. Like, and that kind of makes sense to me because these trucks, equipment, whatever, like they're out on the job sites. You need to keep them going. That's what's making the company money,
Yeah.
and you don't want that stuff to break down at the worst possible time because that's when it always happens. It seems like, and not only that, it puts more pressure on us as a mechanic or whatever when you've got a piece of equipment or something broke down in the middle of the road someplace or on a really high priority job or whatever that stuff's got to keep going because then you've got upset superintendents and foremans and
Sure.
stuff breathing down your neck trying to get you to get stuff fixed, which I never ran into any issues there. I always took care of people very well, but yeah, I mean it's a different kind of work for sure.
Mhm. So to come and do this now, to go to cars, what was it like?
So I'll say this: when I interviewed at Eigel, I was coming from working on mostly pickup trucks and I had a decent amount and I had spent 3 years working on heavy trucks there at Kikosing on their night shift. And I told them this. I said, you know what? It's all nuts and bolts. Like, as long as you got the service information, the right information you need, for the most part, I mean, it's similar stuff to an extent.
Yeah.
And I feel, getting into just the automotive stuff here within the last 2.5 years, I mean, I feel that it's still the same way. I mean, it's not rocket science in a sense. Now there are, especially newer vehicles and stuff, you got more computerized systems and what you do on some equipment and heavy trucks and stuff. The heavy truck industry has always been behind the automotive industry, but luckily my time at Kikosing, like I said, I stayed up to date very well with pickup truck stuff and whatnot. So we always did a week long training with AC Delco. They would send down a trainer and stuff, and we would do it right there in their training, Kikosing's training facility and stuff. And it was always a good class. They would tailor it to whatever we were interested in or wanting to learn more on and stuff. And it was good staying up to date that way.
It's key, isn't it? Like that's the thing. It doesn't matter what you work on. You need the service information to be able to fix it. But then there's so many things that you take from the training, especially when it's like geared to what you work on, that your instructor can show you. Like it was the same for me when I go on Chrysler training, and I didn't take a ton of it. But I mean, when you were in the classroom talking to the other guys that had been in the shops running into this and that, or the instructor who's like, yeah, well, wait till you start to see these come back for this reason. And then, here's the little trick to be able to navigate that job faster. That was what was way more valuable for training for me, was how to apply it, because the guy that writes the book doesn't fix the car. And the
Right.
guy that fixes the car should not write the book. But there's a fine line when you can get it down on paper or in a teachable format where it really works well. And it's finding that mix, right? I always found I'm a hands-on learner. I'm not like, I can read well, and I do read a ton, but I'm a hands-on guy. I've got to see how you actually like put that valve back together. You know what I mean? A blow up on the paper doesn't do anything to me. If you show me like kind of how you got to cog it to get it to slide in, that's because I'm one of those people where if I spend too long and there's some kind of trick in how you got to hold your tongue and it won't go, I get frustrated with the whole engineering of it and I throw it through the window and I go back to what I know.
Yeah.
That's my brain works, right? Whereas if you're working with somebody that's like just done it a couple of times and they can show you, oh no, click, oh, that's how. And that same process, I apply it to now how I teach my young people with electrical and drivability, right? Let's just start at the very, very root of the problem, the basic thing. Don't worry about what you don't have. Show me what you have. Let's get that out of the way.
Yep.
Eliminate that, right? And then go on to the problem. It's amazing how much better that works when we start to actually approach it that way for people. Training is one of those things. So you took some AC Delco training, and you're working away. I guess I kind of say you're kind of working at nights on people's cars and trucks, and you just built your business that way.
Basically, yeah, man. At first, well, actually, even now, I still have not done any real advertising or anything. It started out all just word of mouth and stuff. And I mean, it took off like crazy, man. I learned very quickly, like if you just take care of people, treat them fair, communicate with them very well, whether they understand what you're talking about or not, and just treat them fair. I mean, I had no trouble whatsoever. I've got, I've probably got, I'd say maybe 150 customers, and over the last 2.5 years, and probably 120 of them are returning customers.
Right.
Maybe even more than that. And I mean, it was not difficult for me at all getting a customer base built up. I mean it, and I do have a website and stuff now. I do have a Facebook page. I used to do a little bit with my Facebook page, but gosh, I haven't even touched that thing in months now. Well, being a one man show, I've got too much work at the moment, and that's part of my frustrations at the moment. I suppose is just having, being too busy and just not. I suppose I don't have the best process in place to you know working at my house here. My shop's at my house, so part of the problem when I first started out, I was using my personal cell phone number.
Right.
I learned very quickly that I don't want people calling me at all hours of the night and 7 days a week about their issues or whatever. So I got a separate phone for my shop. But my problem now is everybody still hands out not everybody, but some people that started off with my personal number, even though I've communicated with most of my customers that I have a shop line now. They still seem to call my personal phone, and not only that, but hand that number out to other people also. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I should have just made my personal number my shop line and just got a new phone number for my personal number is what I should have done. But
Yeah. It's tough though because like I know my phone number's been the same now for the last 7 years, and then when I switched providers, I had to get a new phone number. So, I mean, I had that phone number for almost 10 years. So
yeah,
it's like the only two numbers I can ever remember anymore is my own phone numbers. I can't
yeah,
remember it trying to call. Right, it's all stored in my phone. So I'm leery of like when I have to give people my new number, if that should ever have to happen. Hopefully not. How the heck's anybody ever going to be find me? Meanwhile, like we're all linked up now with Messenger, so it's like who even needs a phone number anymore, right? Like we're all
right.
our digital ID. When you kind of talked before we got on here about how you listen to my podcast, you listen to Changing the Industry.
Yep.
There's a lot of people just like yourself in Changing the Industry podcast and in that group. How did you find that group?
You know what? I was thinking about that the other day after we talked for the first time there, and I do not remember how in the world I figured out about the Changing the Industry podcast and the ASOG Facebook group. I must have just been messing around on Facebook or something one day, I'm guessing, and because I honestly cannot remember how I figured out about that. I know it wasn't anybody that told me about it, not that I can think of, because it was after I started my business that I found out about your podcast, about the Changing the Industry podcast, and the ASOG Facebook group and stuff, and a few other ones even. But I can't remember. I cannot remember
Yeah,
for the life of me how I heard about it. I'd say I was probably just messing around on Facebook,
yeah.
looking for information or resources, and probably stumbled upon it. If I had to guess, that's probably how it happened. But
Mm-hmm.
that's been too long ago for me to remember now. So
It changes. So can I say it's probably changed what you like? You don't. what I hear from a lot of people is they realize that they're not alone,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it is definitely after when I first started listening to your podcast, and actually I started listening to Changing the Industry first, and then I heard about yours shortly thereafter. But I
Oh.
mean, it was just spot on. I wish I had heard about it, before that when it first started. But yeah, and I'll tell you what, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not certain that my business would be doing as well as what it is without the information that and stuff that I've learned from listening to you guys, and just all the stuff that I've read on the ASOG Facebook group and stuff. I don't post a whole lot on there. In fact, I think I've only posted 2 things on there ever. But anytime I was ever running into any issues or whatnot, or curious about something or how I should do something or whatnot, I would just search it right there on the
Yeah.
ASOL group and find tons of different. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I've spent reading stuff on there and listening to your guys' shows and stuff, and it's been a game changer for me for sure. But at the
It's an
same
amazing.
time, it's still, I don't know. It seems like you fix one issue, or you find out how to do one thing easier, and then you still got other stuff that is a pain in the butt, other frustrations and whatnot, and it,
It's
and
become an
that's
amazing resource for everybody because it's and you alluded to something that I think sometimes we don't talk about enough, and you see the frustrations come out is because somebody will ask something, and you can see the people that are just like, dude, you can search this subject. We have,
I
you
know.
want to talk applied parts, like we've had 100 conversations about it. Like, go back and search them. Like, it's not a case of people are trying to be rude to people. It's just a situation of like the topic has been very well laid out, hashed out. The warnings have all been shared. Everybody should just be listening, and it's for the people that are less engaged. Because I used to be. How can somebody not be engaged in this stuff as much as I am? And I realize that like some people have way more going on than me, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but it's like people come up with a particular problem, and it's like the group has been great. Like, as for what you were saying about how you seem to get one thing solved and then something else pops up, every shop owner will tell you that's just progress. That's
Well, maybe
right.
it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, I know it's been talked about time and time again. But man, I had no idea what I was getting myself into doing this. I mean, it's been good. It's been a great learning experience and stuff, and I have no regrets whatsoever. But and the Lord has blessed us far more than what we deserve. But yeah, it's hard, man. It's tough. It is not easy. And honestly, some of these guys with bigger shops and stuff and 10 employees or whatever, I don't know how they do it, man. I don't know how they figure that out. I certainly don't have it figured out.
It's that old analogy, right? How to eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time. It's just they started out in the same place you are. I want to think that probably the hurdle that I would have seen, and I did see it when I left working for kind of like fleets back and forth. I've dabbled in fleets, is that the customer is so different in an independent little shop like yourself versus what a fleet customer is like. A fleet customer is just like, when it's broken, throw money at it. I need it right away. Don't call me until it's done. That's it. The customer that rolls into your shop, I don't want to stereotype, but it's probably a limited budget, like resources. They have to plan, how do I spend my money to get this thing back into a usable position, right? That's what always wigged me out. It was hard to just flip a switch and go from a much bigger budget to a very smaller budget. And you probably find that too, eh?
Well, to an extent, like I was saying, I'm not sure what that was.
This is a glitch.
Yeah, but I've been blessed, man, with a great group of customers, man, and for the most part, I definitely have a fair amount of customers that do have that limited budget, and unfortunately, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I'm also the type of person to try and help people out as much as I can when I know that they need help. I've done, well, I've done plenty of work for free for people, people in our church and stuff that are in hard times, whatever, that need some help. And that's how it should be, I think, personally. I I know there's some mixed reviews on that. It seems like reading some of the stuff in the ASOL group and whatnot, like every second of every time you spend on somebody's vehicle needs to be charged for or billed for or whatnot. But I don't entirely agree with that. But yeah, I mean, something that I noticed too is I started doing digital vehicle inspections about, it would have been June of last year when I switched to TechMetric for my shop management software. And holy smokes, let me tell you, and I did not realize this would be the case, but almost every single vehicle that comes through my shop that I do, especially, a vehicle that I haven't seen before, first time customer or whatever, it seems like almost every single customer that I do that inspection for and throw the estimate together, send it to them for whatever I find, they almost always decide to do all the work on it.
Really?
That's been very surprising to me. I shouldn't say always, but I would say a good 90% of the time, they will do all the work on that list. And I don't know why that is. I'm sure it's not that way for everybody because, like you said, a lot of people are on limited budgets. In all honesty, I don't know how people afford to pay to fix their cars, man. Because I don't know if I could pay somebody to fix our old worn out stuff, man. But and but I get it. I get why it's so expensive. It needs to be expensive because our tooling is expensive. Our shop software is expensive. Our all our subscriptions for service information, all that stuff, man, it's extremely expensive. I'd hate to look at how much I'm actually spending per month between, service information and just different subscriptions and shop software and stuff. I mean, and I'm just a little guy. I mean, I couldn't imagine what a big shop is paying for that stuff. And so it doesn't surprise me at all why labor rates. And the good thing about that is I like explaining that to my customers because obviously I can be a little bit cheaper than most any other shop around town just because I don't have the overhead. And
Right.
I do enjoy helping people. That's really why I got into this in the first place. But I explained to them like, hey, like, yeah, my labor rate might be $20 an hour, $30 an hour less than, you know, the other general repair shop or something down the road. But the reason for that is because, well, I don't have to spend $3,000 a month and for lease or whatever for a building. I'm not paying anybody else working with me. For the most part, I have had some people come in part-time here and help me here and there, but yeah, so my overhead is way lower, but these other places have to charge that amount, more than me because they have the bills to pay and they are entitled to a profit too. None of us are in business to break even or lose
Lose
money. Yeah. So,
money.
and people, I like having those conversations with my customers because it at least seems like they start to get it at that point.
Those conversations frustrate me when I have to have them with my customers. And I mean, I'm not the owner or the manager or something. I'm just a tech that oftentimes is having to explain to a customer about what it costs and why. Because, we have some advisors at my shop that are relatively new. They're new to the industry. They're new to the whole thing. You made an interesting point. You were talking about how you can do, some people will tell you you should know per minute what it should cost, and there has to be a cost to that. And you're not wrong in the sense that you can choose to do some jobs for free or whatever to help people out. I think we get to a point where when we get bigger, right? if you bring on an employee or you bring on two employees, right? Or you go to three bays and it's you and two. We find a line where we can't do as much because it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you want to help the customer out, but your number one priority always in business should be to help out the people that you work with you, right? I think for too long it was lost on the idea in this industry. It's like, I got to help the customer, I got to help the customer, and we
Yeah.
helped the customer at the sacrifice of ourselves, right? They're people that worked for us. It's the same. You see the conversation lately a lot.
Why is
I
that?
can't.
Why is that so common in our industry?
Well, because for short couple issues, we're the technician shortage is not coming, and we're right in the middle of it. Like we are right knee deep in it, up to our necks, our eyeballs, and can't find people. And then the people that we do get, we have sometimes they have a really skewed perception of what this job is supposed to be, and then we have a really skewed perception of what they should be able to do when they come onto the job. I talk to my friend Brian Pollock all the time, and that is the biggest wrinkle that I'm trying to teach people is when you hire somebody, like, never take them at their word that they can do everything that they say. Look at it as like, if you get 75% of what they say, you'll probably be accurate. Brian just told me they had a hire last 2 weeks. The guy's been there 2 weeks. He told them, came in and said, I can do X, Y, and Z. Great. And he said, I'm not very good at this. Well, turns out he's way better at all of those things than he sold himself to be. Brian said, this is the first hire we've ever had that didn't oversell himself. So that immediately, here's the awesome part of this story. Well, he's got his first paycheck, and there's already $3 more an hour being paid out to this young man than
That's
what was
awesome.
agreed upon. Right? Because think of that, like, that's just awesome. So I tell people all the time, you got to know what it is that you really, really need the person to do. And everybody
Yeah.
goes, well, it's simple, to fix cars. Well, okay, define what you mean by fix for starters. Well, I need him to diagnose the car. Okay, let's really open that nut up because that's my background. If you take a guy that's been like you, that had only worked on, say, one type of Chevy pickup truck. I'm not saying you only worked on one, but you know what I mean, right? Say
Yep.
you work on a fleet of 100 Chevrolet pickup trucks that are from 2006 to 2012. You're going to know that platform like inside out,
Absolutely.
backwards, the whole thing. You're going to be a master on that. If you go and put him in a shop now where he never sees, or she, another Chevy pickup truck and starts to see a bunch of European cars, and you hired that person and said, can you do diag? And he goes, certainly I can. I've done tons of it. And then you put him in there. That's like trying to get a fish and say, how well does this fish fly? Not worth a darn. It's not that they can't do diag. It's just that there's a learning curve now to this that comes into it. And that's assuming the learning curve was they had good processes. I tell everybody, when I came out of the dealer, I told everybody I could diagnose anything under the sun. What I could do was I could swap parts and I could remember pattern failures. It's not the same thing. Could I still diagnose the car? I could, but my instinct was always, when time was of the essence, was to go and grab that tip him out of the car in the bay next to me, plug it in, and then see. And if it fixed it, my diag was done. If it didn't, then my diag started. So we're in this shortage of technicians now, and it's why we have so many of the conversations and obstacles that we're facing this industry is because we don't know how to navigate it. So you said you had a couple part-time people come in. What was that like? Just
it added to my frustration. I'm very particular on how I do stuff. I mean,
okay.
when I went to trade school, it was taught. My teacher there, Mr. McNabb, he said something once that has stuck with me ever since then. And he made the comment, and it was something along the lines like, if you're working on something for a customer, you should be able to tell that you worked on it. Like, if you go in there and change the oil on a car, you spin that new oil filter on there, it should be nice and clean. It shouldn't have any oil on it, stuff like that. If I'm working underneath the hood of something, almost always, as soon as I'm done, I take a rag, I spray it down, spray everything down. I just wipe everything off. It takes, just a minute to do. And whether or not, my customers actually notice that stuff or not, I don't know. But I'm very particular in that aspect. And the couple guys I've had working with me here and there, they were good. It took them a minute to get them used to that. But, ultimately, I always express to them, like, listen, like, I'm paying them by the hour. Both of them, neither one of them were super knowledgeable or anything. I was just more or less looking for somebody that I could push a little bit of the easy stuff off on while I can put out the other fires and whatnot. But
Right.
I always told them, like, listen, like, it doesn't matter to me how long it takes you to do something. Just make sure it's done right, and that everything looks clean, everything's done correctly at the end of the job. And that's that's a whole nother world that I don't know how much longer I'm gonna keep doing this. But if I did get to a point where I had to have employees and stuff, like, that would be a struggle, I think, for me, because I think you have to just kind of let people do their own thing to an extent. Sometimes there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was definitely, it was a learning curve for me. And I don't know that I necessarily learned it entirely, because I'm still working by myself. So
It's like, I'll tell you my struggle. I come to this shop where I've been here now a year, and a lot of my background is flat rate. So, when I see how he's one of the first owners that I've ever really had that was like, he says the same thing. I don't care if the diag takes 2 hours as long as it's accurately diagnosed. That's the priority. I don't care if we quoted 6 hours to put that transmission in and it took you 8, as long as it's programmed, the whole thing, everything's done perfect. I don't have to worry about that. I don't care. And so it's a struggle for me, though, because I've been doing this so long that I'm too invested in the numbers. So when I see, the quoted times, the build times, and all that kind of stuff, and I start to go, like, that's ridiculous. That just doesn't make sense. Like, we should have charged more. It comes back to that conversation that we always have about value, right? Like, I feel sometimes like we're not showing the customer the value that we should be when we don't charge enough for it, right? And there's two sides to that, because sometimes it's like they'll say you can't teach the customer, they don't care about the value they already feel. And then the other conversation that just popped up, which was really interesting, somebody said, is I keep having customers asking me, why am I being paid for 8 hours, when the job only took 6? And I keep saying, and I said to them, so for us, like, for instance, everything, we're big on an engine shampoo when we're done. We're big on a lot of quality control processes, a lot of test drives and everything. You have to itemize that and show it to the customer that it was actually something built into the repair time of what they're paying for, right? And then it's like, you see some people and the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, okay, because that's not shown to me at the dealership. It's just implied that it was done. But I'm comparing prices now, and you guys are saying you need, you're more money than the dealer, or you're quoting me more hours. Why is that? It's little things like that. Every little thing that we do, we need to be showing the customer that we do it, and we're going to charge you for it, right? Because that's the value. If you don't, it goes away assuming that, oh, you should have shampooed it off. Well, no, if you want to just pay the straight up labor on what it is to re-and a transmission, it's 6 hours. There's no shampoo involved in the thing. The shampooing is because it's been leaking for a while, right? The front pump seal's shot, the tranny blew up. Now we got a mess to clean up. Well, there's nowhere in any law book that says we can't charge for that time. So when I see people and it's like, we're not comparing apples to apples, and a lot of times in this industry, when we say that shop did it and this shop did it, why is that shop $200 more? Because they've got things built into their quality control that they're going to charge for. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. No.
So it's when we have those kind of conversations that people, that's to me is educating my customer and showing my customer where I sometimes have the struggle, because I do it so much now that I get tired of having to have that conversation. Like I'm trying to justify why I cost what I cost. You know, that's the frustrating part for me. You seem to like it though.
Yeah, I mean, the question I that comes to me often that I like to remind myself of too is, which for you is different. Like you said, you're working for somebody and stuff, but why did I start my business? What is my end game for starting my business? And my thing is, well, for one, first and foremost, to provide for my family. That's one. Number two, I would say I want to give back to my community. If I'm not using my business to help people, not only for a profit, so I can provide for my family, but to be able to give back at the same time, to be able to help people that need help, and not only that, but give the absolute best value for my customers that are supporting me and my business. And I do enjoy that. I used to, I've kind of gotten away from it a little bit, but some of the older vehicles I might work on where they got the headlights are just faded and stuff. I've got a really good polish. It takes me a minute to do, man. I never say anything to my customers about this stuff because I'm always curious if they're notice it and say something to me about it, I guess. But I'd go through, polish their headlights up. They look brand new for a little bit anyway, until they get faded again, a couple months down the road. But it takes me 2 minutes to do, man. And the people that do notice that stuff though are usually pretty appreciative of it and just surprised about it too. In the same, and for me, I don't know. Shortly after I started my business, I came to the conclusion, for one, that I don't think I'm ever going to get rich doing this stuff. I saw a comment there on my post in the ASOG Facebook group about somebody that said this industry has made them rich, and I don't know if he's talking about money or not, but I've never known a rich mechanic or shop owner. Now I think you can make a good living at it if you get in the right place and stuff, but you're not going to get stupid wealthy doing this stuff. And maybe I'm wrong about, and I'm okay with that. I had a mindset for a long time that that's what I want, but I think God's kind of called me to a little different, for a
Ah,
different calling, man. And we provide a service, and that service is taking care of people's automobiles, and I want to make sure that they're getting the absolute best value that they can for that. And I also want to be able to explain to them why they might think that they're not getting value someplace else, or maybe that they are getting value at someplace else and they don't even realize it. Because
yeah.
there just seems to be a major lack of communication
Mhm.
between shops and customers. I mean, I'm telling you, Jeff, every day I'd say I have people coming to me telling me about how some other shops trying to screw them over or whatever, and they might show me an estimate or whatever, and it's like, well, no, like they need to charge that because they need to make a profit, otherwise they're not going to stay in business. Or what I see a lot too, people bring stuff to me and they tell me it needs one thing, and because they just had it somewhere or whatever, and they want me to look at it because obviously I'm going to be a little bit cheaper most of the time, not always, but I look at it and it's something completely different. Maybe it's an easier fix. Maybe it's a bigger, more costly fix or whatever. And then they think that they might be getting screwed over. That whatever shop they were at didn't communicate with them or explain to them what they did, or maybe they just didn't do stuff. I don't know, but there seems to be a major lack of communication between service advisors or other guys like
There's
myself that do this stuff, and I I go above and beyond to explain stuff to my customers. I probably spend too much time doing it to an extent. In fact, I've even been told by some of my customers before, like, "Hey, don't waste your breath because I have no clue what you're talking about." And it's like, well, that's fair enough, but I want to. If you do want to understand, if you do want to have a better idea on why this part failed or why we have to, do so much to fix it or whatnot, like I want to communicate that and convey that to people to help them better understand. And I always tell my customers too, when they do think that they're getting screwed from some other place or whatever, like I always try and explain to them, like I hope it was just a lack of communication, between their mechanic and the service advisor or whatever, because I would like to believe that that's not the case most of the time, that there's shops out there all over the place trying to screw people over. I don't think that's the case.
I believe I'm right there with you. I don't think most of the time it's communication or it's screwing over. There's a couple things to unwrap there. There's a lack of competence on sometimes on what people are actually paying for in terms of the diag side of things. The other side of it is like, we had a conversation 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Somebody had a belt shred on a car and it got towed over from the dealership and then it got towed into another shop and they said, oh, it needed an idler or tensioner. I can't remember. And the technician that looked at it now at their shop said, I didn't find anything wrong with either. And I were trying to rip them off. We have to remember sometimes that like other shops sometimes have to carry more warranty or choose to offer more warranty. So like, because if they go and just put a belt on that and then say the customer never turns on the air conditioning until August, say we put the belt on in January, and in January we didn't catch that the compressor was a little bit tight, right? So we put the new belt on, and then come August, that thing's had 2 months of just like hammering on that belt through the compressor clutch. Guess what happens? Well, the belt goes off, right? Now they're back to that shop that put a belt on. And that they're like, hey, I want a free belt, and look what your belt did to my AC compressor or tensioner or whatever, right? It ended up behind the pulley up into the crank seal and blah, blah, blah. Well, we all know the nightmare stories.
Right.
So sometimes I think what they happen is, and I know from me, my days, I knew certain caravans, I knew that you never put a belt on without changing the tensioner, because you could come in 2 months later and pull on that tensioner and the spring was seized. It wouldn't retract. So it just became part and parcel. Now, some of them, when I pulled it down, put the belt on, it wasn't seized. But I knew that within 6 months' time, it was going to be seized. It was a 4-year-old caravan. It had 200,000 kilometers on it, right? It had a ton of miles. It was not going to last another year. There was no sense in doing that job, pardon the term, half-assed. So I think this is where we get into this kind of conversation about, because at the end of it, if I'd have put the belt on without the tensioner and it comes in, I'm buying them a tow bill, I'm buying them a tensioner, and I'm buying them a belt. That's just what's going to be expected to do to make the customer feel right again. Not every shop has the luxury of being able to offer such an implied warranty. So that's why sometimes we say the best way to do this, Mrs. Smith, is I'm changing your belt and your tensioner at the same time. If you explain it, like you said, properly, communication is key. If I explain it properly to my customer, it should be a slam dunk. It should be easy to understand why I'm doing it. I'm advocating for you, for your reliability of your vehicle, that this is the best repair. I say it all the time. My buzz phrase is, I'm not trying to get more money out of you. I'm just trying to do the best repair that I can. That statement has got me a lot more fans than it ever has, pissed people off. Some people you just can't reason with. It sucks.
Yeah.
They're like, why do I need to change it now? I might not be driving the car in 2 years. It doesn't matter. Every person that has ever said they won't be driving this in 2 years, I see them at year 3 still driving it. That's why I have to do it that way. And I have to do it that way because if you sell the car to somebody else, I may see that customer, same car, different customer. If it's a safety related thing, I don't want it on my conscience that I did a less than stellar repair for a budget when it means that safety is an issue. Safety is first, reliability is second, profit should be third. When you start to mix those three around in different, that's when things can go wrong. And that's just my own, opinion on how it should be: safe, reliable, profitable. Profitable, like I said, there's nothing wrong with profit. It's not a dirty word.
No, not at all. Not at all. And safety is something that I bring up with my customers all the time. I mean, a lot of people don't realize just the liability and stuff that goes along with our jobs and stuff. I mean, and that was part of my reason behind starting digital vehicle inspections and stuff. And that's something I, learned from the podcast and the ASOL group and whatnot also is, if I'm the professional working on a vehicle, if I have a car come in here and if it needs rear brakes on it and my customer tells me it needs rear brakes or grinding, whatever, and I get this thing in here and I put it on my lift, rear brakes are shot, sell them rear brakes. I don't look at anything else on this car. And here it's got a wheel bearing on the front that's about to fall off of it. And they leave out of my shop and crash and kill somebody or themselves or whatever. I'm the professional that just worked on that vehicle. Like, I'm pretty sure a good lawyer could probably put me in prison and take everything I got if they wanted to. Now, gosh, I hope that never happens to anybody, but that is the reality of it. And I think that's something that, a lot of people tend to maybe not think about sometimes, I guess. We got so much other stuff going on as mechanics and shop owners and stuff. Like, that's kind of the last thing on your mind. What's going to happen to your customer's car when they leave the shop, as long as what's fixed for whatever the issue that they came in for is fixed when it leaves. But that's not the case with me. If it's a safety issue and I have a customer that doesn't want to fix it correctly, I won't work on it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put my name on it because it's just not worth it. I mean, and that, that kind of comes back to my, one of my first things for starting my business, providing for my family. So I can't provide for my family if I let something go out of here and end up in prison because somebody gets killed or crashes or whatever due to something I missed.
It's those scenarios that keep shop owners up at night, right? Like, that's the thing. And we get such a kickback at first, or pushback, excuse me, when we start to, really inspect these cars well and show all these customers. They get so much. I don't want to know about that. I don't want to know about that. Well, it doesn't matter that you want to know about it or not. I have an obligation to make you aware of it. And I keep telling people that. You don't have to fix it.
That goes back to the communication thing, because when I have a new customer, that's when I schedule them in, the very first thing I tell them, like, hey, I'm going to do a digital vehicle inspection on your vehicle. I'm one of the dumb ones, and I don't charge for it when I should. But I just check everything over, and I explain to them, like, this is why I do it too. The safety aspect of it. But not only that, but you should know, especially if you don't know anything about cars. You never, if you just drive your car and always have somebody else do all the service to it, like, you should know what kind of condition your vehicle's in. And I explain that to them, though. I go through, I tell them everything, like, hey, you're going to get this text message. It's going to have a link to the inspection I did. I attach pictures, notes, everything, anything I find. And most of the time, which probably because I don't charge us for it, but most of the time nobody has any problem with that. But yeah, I imagine, it would be interesting to see how that would go over if I told them, well, you're getting charged a half-hour labor for this digital vehicle inspection. And I imagine I would probably get more pushback, more likely.
It's one of those things, one of those places where I think, and I'm not trying to advocate in this industry to be dishonest, but I think it's just we all need to step up And if the car's coming in for an oil change, as an example, I think we all need to build in another half an hour additional labor now and be doing these. And it's just build. It's just the way it is. Too many places are not. And it's what's unfortunately holding us back is because, like lots of shops, and I'm not trying to single anyone out, including yourself, when the shops just do the inspection for free, that's fine. Okay. But what happens is when you don't even tell the customer you're doing it, and everybody is now doing the inspection, and the shop, one shop is saying we also did an inspection, and then the other shop is just doing an oil change and doing the same inspection but not even telling the customer we inspected X, Y, and Z. Where it always ends up then is that I can't add value to the inspection because either somebody's doing it for free or it's just implied that I should do it. Well, unfortunately, with the younger technicians out there now, their brains work different. They're given a task, change oil, and they change oil. Right? Where I was coming up, and probably you were coming up, you were taught to inspect the whole car. Right? That's just what you did. When it was racked to do an oil change, you check the ball joints. Right? When it's sitting there, the oil draining, you don't stand there and watch the oil run out. You go and look at the rest of the car. You look at the tires, you look at the brakes, you look at the struts, blah, 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 blah. The young people now, so this is why this has become so important, is because we all have to be doing, I think, for the most part, the inspections we've always done and should have done. But now we have to tell the customer why we're doing it, because the driver, the consumer, isn't the same either. They don't have a damn clue what a strut is or what it does or what it means. They don't care, but they want to know that, like, if I hit a bump and this thing sounds funny, why is it doing that? Okay, well, the strut's leaking oil. That's what you hear. Okay, you need a pair of struts, so on and so on. When we don't charge for it, it's really hard now to add value to that, because I'm a big proponent that if it's for free, I can never then, if I have to start charging that customer for the service, the customer will never feel like it's worth what I have to charge. The conversation came up in one of my episodes. One guy does free tire repairs all the time. It's just what they do. Customer comes in, never been there before, regular customer, doesn't matter. The tire needs to be repaired, they repair the tire. Free. That's part of his marketing. Cool. If all of a sudden now labor rates go up to an astronomical amount and you can't get technicians, you got to hire people and they got to pay them twice what you were paying them, maybe you can't do that service anymore. Maybe you can't extend that courtesy. If I can't extend it and all of a sudden I have to charge for it, I could go from charging nothing to charging $10, and my customers that used to get it for free will go, why does it have to be $10? Do you know what I mean? Meanwhile, the other shop that's always been charging $50 to plug the tire rolls on like nothing ever happened. So that's where we've got to get this thinking in our brains in this industry that, like, free is good. Free's not good, in my opinion. Now, what I'm not trying to call you out, Cody. Please don't take it that way. It's just we can build free into the marketing of our business, or we can build free into rewarding our customer. But at the end of the day, we have to still be transparent and tell the customer it's not just an oil change. I also did this. You see what I mean? When we're not doing that the communication doesn't even work then.
You're absolutely right. I mean, transparency is key, and I do way more free stuff than what I should. I definitely know that. But the thing is, I think there's a lot of shops out there that aren't being transparent, though, and aren't communicating, and I think that's where the industry kind of gets some of its bad rap from. And I can't say for sure what all the other shops around town here do, but I have a lot of my customers that are very surprised about TechMetric as far as their me being able to send them their digital vehicle inspection, send the estimates over and stuff like that. And most of them that I talk to that bring it up about how they like the software and how I do everything, most of them tell me that they have never seen that before.
Yeah.
Which is a huge surprise to me, because there is a ton of shops around town that do much more revenue than I do. And I have zero issue being the little guy and paying extra for this software to be able to do this stuff. And not only that, it increased my sales tremendously doing this stuff and being transparent. I don't understand why I don't understand why every shop doesn't have a shop software that will do these things, or maybe they're just not doing them and sending them to the customers. I don't know, but it's a conversation I've had with many of my customers that bring it up about how they like the software and whatnot, and or maybe they just haven't been to these places. I don't know, but certainly somebody's got to be changing the oil in their car at some point in time. But
I think is what it boils down to though is that it's like you see so many people that we try to say, okay, if you're used to doing 6 cars a day, get to where you can make the same money doing only 5. And then after you've got them 5, try to get to where you can make the same money doing 4. And everybody looks at you like you're nuts. Well, what the hell? Like, because we're not necessarily, once you can get to where you're doing 4 when you used to do 6, you're only going to do 4. But it means that that 5th one, that money, that profit can go towards a better service to the customer. You know, whatever it is you want to offer, a shuttle service, whatever. Who cares? A car wash at the end. It's all irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's just you're offering a better service. So I think what's happened is some of these shops have been so driven by, I have to get 12 cars through today because I'm going to have 6 that they're not going to do anything, right? I've got 6 oil changes and 6 oil changes only. I don't have time to even write the estimate for the car. It's gone. I'm going to give a little note at the end of like, hey, we noticed this. Next time you're in for an oil change, let's think about doing that. It's such a stupid way to handle it. We need to be like slowing down and going, okay, this is the car. We inspected the car. This is all what needs to be done. You know this, right? You do
yep,
it. And why? That's why I think when you're asking me your question, why are shops not doing it? It's because they don't know. They're too scared to go from doing 12 cars a day to 6. They're so terrified that they can't make the money. Now, what it takes to make the money with 6 instead of 12 is you have to have somebody on the counter who's top notch, who can explain it, communicate it, sell it. That's what it is. It's an ugly word. Some people don't like it in this industry. This is sales. This is sales. I have to show you why it's necessary to do the repair, and then I have to get you to do the repair. That's selling. There's no question about it. We can put different words on it. It's selling stuff, and there's nothing wrong with it, right?
yeah,
Where
absolutely.
sales is like when somebody comes in to want to buy a Cavalier and you sell them a Cadillac. That's shady sales. We're not doing that in this industry for the most part. Now, there's exceptions, right? But I mean, for the most part, we're not. I've said it before. I've never seen a car that was over maintained, and I've never seen a car that was overly repaired to the point of safety. Never. Right. So let's get that out of the question about is it wrong to flush the transmission fluid every year? If the car only sits, yeah. But if the car goes 20,000 miles and somebody gets peace of mind out of that and they're willing to do it, I'm not going to tell somebody you don't need to do that every 20,000, right?
I'd have to disagree with you a little bit there. I mean, I have a few customers that are sometimes they want stuff done above and beyond, which I'm okay with. If they ultimately want that, like I'm not going to turn them away or something. But if they just had their transmission flushed last year and that service interval on that thing's every 60,000 miles or something, and they've only put 20,000 miles on it, I'm going to convey that to them. Like, hey, like the manufacturer recommends you do it every 60,000. You just had this done 20,000 miles ago. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you don't
right.
want to. And if they insist at that point, like, okay, well, whatever, I did my part at least to convey that. But if they just, if they want their transmission flushed every year, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't explain that to them, I feel like, and maybe I'm misunderstanding you there.
Yeah, because I think you are. You're not. I'm not saying don't advocate. I'm not saying that like we just like a slime ball advisor that we've ever all seen the horror stories about who just immediately signs them up for it and takes it again. You have to have that conversation and say, Mrs. Smith, it's early. It's not due. If it makes you have peace of mind, we'll certainly perform the service. There might be better places to spend the money on the car, but hypothetically,
Right.
say, she just is. It's like, Cody, do you still get people coming in and it's like they want a tune up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one scheduled next week, actually.
So when we know what that's like, a lot of the time when you go and look at the car, really there's something else causing the issue, right? Of whatever, if there is a drivability complaint, some people still think it's like, I still get customers that when they would drop it off in the fall, I had, God bless him, he was 82 years old. He would drop the car off in the fall and he would be like, I want a tune up done. That was just what because he'd been driving since the 50s. So that's what you did. You tuned it up in the spring, you tuned it up in the fall. That's what he meant. And I had to say to him, it's like, so funny story. He drove a front wheel drive Buick. I think it was like a Lucerne, one of the last ones that had like the 3.8 in it or something like that, right? And I want a tune up done. I want a tune up done. Cool. All right. So he had no mileage on this thing. It ran fine. So finally he talks me into it. We do a tune up. So we get the parts and everything, and the other technician ends up doing the tune up. Well, of course, after we did the tune up, because nobody went to him and said, hey, maybe we should do ignition wires at the same time, we had a misfire caused by an ignition wire that came off. So that car would have been perfect if we'd have left it alone at the time, right? We went in and kind of created a problem. Now, he was cool about it. We handled it. It was fine, whatever, right? But that's my thing sometimes when it's like people come in and it's like they're still using old terminology, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So first and foremost, you got to be the advocate. But I mean, I'm not going to, if the customer wants a reasonable service done, I'm not going to turn around and not do it. Now, it's funny because we used to have like customers that would come in at one of the last places I worked, and they would get their oil changed in June, right? And then they'd park the car. It was like a seasonal car. And they bring it back next June. Car hadn't gone 1,000 miles. Want another oil change done. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, if you're, we're talking about an oil change here too, so it's not like a transmission service where they're going to be spending $400 or maybe even more doing it. I tell my customers when it comes to oil changes, engine oil changes, my personal preference and professional preference is I think a lot of these manufacturers drag out some of these oil changes too long anymore. Some of these cars 100%. Will go 10,000 miles before your change engine oil light will come on or whatnot. And that's just too much, I think. And I tell my customers this. I usually recommend to everybody 5,000 miles. But on my stuff, I don't even put 5,000 miles on it in a year's time. I don't have to go a whole lot of place. Well, I shouldn't say that. My personal pickup truck, I hardly ever drive it. I probably put maybe 1,000 miles on that thing a year at the most. I change the oil in it every year. So I would explain to them, I would say that, well, I would probably, if they put 1,000 miles on in a year, I would recommend to them that they should probably, if they want their oil changed, I would go ahead and do it. I mean,
it's just funny. It's funny though, how in the industry we break it down to where it's like, if the service that we're offering them or they want to get done, even if it doesn't costs under this amount, we just go ahead and do it. If it costs over a certain amount, we try and talk them out of it. And it's a funny paradox to me. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right. Like I'm not. It's something that I think about a lot in this industry, because when you go back to the conversations we have about shops talking about other shops, and that's ripping this person off and that's ripping. It's all perspective. It really is. It's whatever you have to service your customer, and that's it. It's, going back to what you're talking about, you're never going to be wealthy. Lucas and I have a lot of conversations about that when nobody's listening, because it's well, how do you define wealth, right? And I think when I listen to you, Cody, I think you've already found it, right?
Yeah. Oh
And
no, I this that's been a very recent finding for me. Yeah, I found wealth as soon as I found Jesus. In all reality, if I'm being 100% honest, before that, you know, my idea of wealth was a couple $1,000,000 in your bank account or whatever, and that's not the case. Success is how you define it. I mean, there is no success that you know covers everybody across the board. But I mean, I could be sitting here and be a millionaire and I actually I'd guarantee I'd have more frustrations than what I do right now. You know, the more probably the more money you got, probably the more you know headaches and stuff you got. But I think we tend to look at success and stuff too much as a financial goal or whatnot, where, in my opinion, I think we should look more at success as what do I have that I can help somebody else with?
Mhm.
And, you know, how do I want to explain this? We spend a whole lot of time thinking about, stuff. I mean, money, our homes, our tools, we gotta have bigger and better things. We're as humans, I think most of us are pretty materialistic people and stuff. I mean, that's just kind of in our nature to an extent, and that's why success is related to that stuff, how much stuff you have or whatever. Where I think you could probably be almost a homeless person and be successful in your mind if if what you're doing is God's work anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's an interesting thing. That's why I I kind of wish he would have elaborated a little bit more in his comment when he mentioned that this career has made him rich on that ASOL Facebook group. But I don't look at success as being rich anymore by any
So
means.
I can give you some context to who that is because he's a good friend of mine and we talk quite a bit. That's Zeb.
Yeah,
And he about his shop and he's not wrong. Now, like he got a ton of debt. Like that building is expensive as heck to build, and it's like it's a finely tuned machine with a lot of moving parts.
yeah,
What I can say about him is like he he is the most fearless shop owner I've ever met. And now you got to realize I've met a lot of them now, and I network and talk with a ton of shop owners. Some I call my friends, and some like I talk to them, but they probably don't really like me. But you know what I mean. But I talk to them nonetheless, and they talk to me. He has got such a belief in himself and his team that he sees no ceiling to where he can go. So when he says that he's rich, I think what he means is the sense that he's already hit that point where he knows he's built something that he can leave his son. And it is already because his son works with him. His son is a brilliant technician himself, that he knows it's going to be in good hands, right? He has set his son up for success. He just had his first grandson born. He set his grandson up for success if this should stay in the family. So I don't think like even when he says it made him rich, he had a monetary number in mind as much as like if he had a goal, I think he's hit it.
that's
And I think
awesome.
that's what he means by he's rich. When Lucas and I talk about you made an interesting point about the homeless person. We had a conversation once and I said, isn't it amazing sometimes how you can see people that seem to have nothing and yet they are happy to be where they are. And you can see it from two ways. You can see it as it's like, imagine what they came from, that where they're now living under in a street corner somewhere. or going to a hostel or something like that is better than where they were. That's a scary thing, right? And then the other part, we see it online. People like will go and ask a homeless person for $1 and they will give them the dollar. You know, they'll turn around and somebody gifts them $100, they gift it back to somebody else just because that's like we don't know the human paradox as well as we think we do. We think
no,
we
not
have
at
it all.
all.
But I mean, so that's like, and I sometimes, when in my conversations I have with my friends, I'm like, this guy's like a, you know, he's a jerk. You know, he's got all this what seems like wealth, and he treats his people like this. Like we were just talking about before we got on the air tonight about that one particular shop owner. I have to remember that it's like sometimes people, when they try to fill up what's missing with material things, what can look like wealth to us, you and I, is baggage and burden and weight upon their shoulders. You know what I mean? So I think I know where I am in my career in this. I'm already rich. I've already done it. I made it. You know what I mean? It can all go away tomorrow financially, and I know I'm in a good place. I know that I have made an impact and I've steered the course on a different direction from where it was if I had not come into this. So I think for me, I'm wealthy too. I'm rich. Does that make sense? It's kind of deep, eh?
Well, I think we could get a whole lot deeper if you wanted to, but but yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I just don't know that I would call it. Sure, you can call it rich, but I think you're successful in your mind, and yeah, and not that I think I've been um, more successful with my business than what I deserve, for sure. But it seems to be in our industry, all the mechanics and stuff I know. I can't say I know a whole heck of a lot of shop owners because I haven't been a shop owner myself for more than a couple years here. But it there seems to be a pretty common thing where people seem to think that they are underpaid, that they it all revolves around money, and I get that the world revolves around money and stuff, but people are you know have a misunderstanding about success, I feel like, and it does revolve around those material things and stuff, and I mean, I guess that's just our culture, I guess, that teaches us that. But I yeah, I mean, yeah, I've made it too. I don't have anything that necessarily I think I'm going to leave behind for my kids just yet. But in fact, the whole reason we're doing this podcast here is just because I've been seriously considering closing down my shop just because of how you know frustrating it can be, and and maybe a lot of that's probably me. A lot of that might be the situations and stuff that we're in with my family and whatnot. But yeah, I mean but even without that though, even if I was making $41 an hour or whatever at a job I could do whatever I wanted at before, but
Right.
wasn't happy there. So
Uh-huh.
you know now I I work for myself, and I still don't know that I have necessarily found happiness, at least in every day. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's weird.
So what? Let's break it down for you then. What's the frustrating part?
Just jobs not going how you think they're gonna go. Just not ever being able to get away from it to an extent for me, and a lot of that is my fault. I haven't figured out how to get away from it, and somebody made the comment on that post as well, it's because you got your shop at your house and stuff. That's a little bit of it, but in my situation, actually, and from the get-go, from the day I started my business, I was actively looking to get out of my shop at home. I wanted my business to be in town because we're outside of town here a little ways, not very far, just a couple minutes, but wanted it in town in a decent location, and I wanted to buy something. I wanted to purchase a place instead of leasing because it's
Yeah, at
the
least
it's ungodly expensive. I don't know how anybody affords it, but gosh, I forget where I was just going with that.
so you wanted to move out into the city, like, or into town,
Yes, okay.
get out.
But here, yeah, I was talking about how it actually has turned out to be a blessing, me working from home. Long story short, not to get into too many details, or I suppose we can get into as many details as you want, but we we've got, we had 3 kids when I started my business here. I got a vasectomy. We weren't having any more kids, and my sister had a baby unplanned. She was going through a very tough time in her life at that point, and she was born. Faith, our baby, was born 8 weeks premature with Down syndrome, with heart defects, and not that my sister didn't want her.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to be allowed to have her. I'll just put it to you like that, to make a long story short. And I don't know, why my wife and I, we didn't think
Didn't
about
even
it.
blink.
We just stepped up like, well, we'll take her, until
Uh-huh.
my sister can get back on her feet, and whatnot. And ultimately, that didn't happen. My sister passed away 2 weeks after Faith was born, and that's all good. But anyway, we ended up with this baby now that, is handicapped, has already had 1 heart surgery. She needs a second heart surgery. Has spent months in the hospital. And like I said, we've got 3 other kids here too. So me being able to have the shop at home, I mean, God literally put me exactly where he needed me for my wife to be able to take care of Faith, all this doctor's appointment and stuff. So it's been a lot of stress on us, especially the business and whatnot. But literally everything has worked out exactly how it was supposed to be. Because I don't know if it would have worked out if I had a shop in town or whatnot. But yeah, it's strange to me how that's worked, but I can't get away from it though, man. Like I told you earlier, like, I got people still handing out my personal phone number and stuff, and I don't know, maybe I just need to be a asshole about it and just stop answering people or something. But
I want you to hear me real quick, and this is not me. Please don't take it as criticism. I want you to
I'm all about the
understand.
criticism.
Listen, I'm in no place to criticize anybody. It's just we're just having a conversation here. I think you're right where God intends you to be, for starters. Okay, and I'm not going to get deeply religious on all this kind of stuff. It's because people are going to shut it off. But I want you to understand something when I say to you, when it goes back to about value, is that you have to think as you move forward and as faith grows older, things will become more expensive. And I want you to learn what your true value is, right? And what your number one priority is to provide for the family. You already know
Right.
that. You've got it. You
Yep.
got it figured out. There's nothing wrong. But understand there's nothing wrong with you charging a little bit more. Nobody's going to fault you for it. Nobody that is really behind you and wants to see, everything succeed is going to be mad at you if you start to charge a little bit more. And I think that's going to remove some of that frustration, because I think your community needs you. I think you need this job. And I think that you just have to, at the end of the day, you maybe look at, like I ran my feet off. I was there, I worked on these cars from 7 in the morning until 6 at night, and I barely stopped. And, there's this always piling up, and that's always piling up. That's life, man. We never get away from
Yeah, absolutely.
the what's pulling on us. But for more shop owners, when I see them and they're in similar situations than you, where they just like there isn't enough hours, or there isn't enough money, or there's just isn't enough, like, understand that it's okay to say no. And what sometimes it means that in order to say no, The people that we say yes to, we have to charge them a little bit more. That's it. It sounds simple, but it's a huge thing to do. So I think, and I'm not saying, Cody, that you're doing anything wrong. Don't take it like that I'm trying to say you shouldn't be
Oh,
doing free
Jeff, you
inspection.
don't know me very well, man. I'm doing a lot wrong.
I don't think you are. It's just, but always keep that on the forefront of why you do it. You know why you do it. You know why you're working is to provide for Faith and the family. But understand that, like, the natural progression with this is you will slow down, and you won't be able to do it you won't be able to go around in overdrive your whole life. You're going to slow down where it's like it's going to lug. You're going to feel like you're going uphill a lot of the time. You want to get to that point to where if you need to take a day to be away, that either the business can survive you being gone a day, or you can survive without the business for a day. Do you understand what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, we haven't really been on much of a vacation at all for about 3 years now. But we do a family. My family has a family reunion down West Virginia here every summer, and we went down there for a weekend, got a cabin and stuff. And dude, I turned my phone off, man. Like I left my phone in the cabin. I didn't talk to anybody. I'll tell you what, I had a lot of crap I had to catch up on come Monday when we got back home. But yeah, it was nice. That was the only way I feel like I was able to get away from it for just a little bit, to just you know get rid of my phone, just turn it off, put it away, and not have it with me, which was great. I need to do that more often, maybe every stinking weekend actually. But
I was just going to say that's what my goal would be for you talking with me and talking in ASOG, and is get yourself to where you can do that.
yeah,
Start out
because
with a plan.
I mean, in all reality, Jeff, the money, you know, oddly enough, has never been an issue. I feel like my labor rate is $124 an hour, which is a little bit below the average for our town and stuff from what I've gathered. And I mean, I have just this year bumped it up to that. When I first started out, I was $100 an hour 2.5 years ago. But
Yeah.
I do feel like I know my value to an extent,
Good.
and I do try and charge accordingly for that. But and yeah, I couldn't agree more. That is a lot of it. I think a lot of shop owners and stuff that struggle and whatnot, it is probably definitely due to their labor rates and whatnot. In fact, the advanced rep told me a couple months ago now, there's some shop around here still charging like $80 an hour, and I couldn't believe that, man. Like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
unreal. I don't know how you stay afloat doing that, especially if you have employees to pay and all that stuff. But then again, I know of other shops around here that still do handwritten invoices and estimates and stuff too, which blows my mind. But knowing your value, I think, is a big thing for people. And I'm still learning it myself, but I'm getting there.
You're. I think you're doing well, man, and I know I've sensed the frustration when we've talked a little bit, and we didn't get really big into why you were frustrated. I just could sense that. So, you know, like I say, I wanna keep in touch with how you're doing and what's happening, and I want to continue to reach out to the people in the group. Think about, like, you know, I'm not saying don't be open, but think about, like, when people are sharing with them, with you, with each other, what they do, and it's different from you. Continue to keep an open mind about why they do it, because I mean, we all have a lot more in common than we think,
Oh yeah,
and
I couldn't agree
what
more
you'll
with that.
I think what you'll find is that, like, you're gonna learn how to be able to step away a little bit more, and I think that that's going to bring your frustration down. A, a good start anyway on coming down. This is a frustrating business. It's always going to be.
It
There's just no. But
Well,
we
there's
can't.
there's no other trade like it. I mean, there's the amount of money that you have to spend in tooling, the amount of knowledge that you have to have, and the how quickly everything's changing. I mean, there's no other industry like it, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there's something I don't know, but I mean, it's just you, you have to be an electrician, you have to be a plumber, you have to be a fabricator, you have to be an engineer, that to an extent to be good in the repair. It's not just changing parts and stuff like a lot of people think to an extent, but
So to wrap it up, do you have a 1 year plan and do you have like a 5 year plan?
I
Or
don't have a plan at all, man.
do you have goals then? Like if I contact you a year from now and we sit down and we do another recording, where do you want to be in that year? What do you want to be able to tell me that you've done? And think about that in 5.
So when I started out with my business and everything, I definitely had goals. I don't think my goals were very practical. One of my first goals that I thought of was, well, in 5 years, I wanted to be doing over $1 million a year in revenue. Well, guess what? Something I've learned listen to Lucas and them guys, like, well, that's kind of a stupid goal because I could be doing $1 million in revenue a year, but not making any money. Like it's a pointless goal. One of my goals I did have for this year, which is since kind of went away just because of the time and stuff we've spent at the hospital with Faith and everything. I did very well last year, or at least I thought so in my mind anyway. And I was trying to do a decent amount better than that this year as far as sales and everything. And at the first part of the year, I was on it, man. I was set to do pretty good. I was working my butt off, but then yeah, we've just ran into issues and stuff with Faith and everything. Since then, it's like, well, I just been trying to get by day to day, I guess, for the most part. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do at this point. A big part of me feels like I should just get out of the industry, like move on to something else, something a little easier, less frustrations. But, you probably have a lot of the frustration still in any industry. But yeah, I don't know.
I think starting something new is always going to be frustrating.
Yeah, and scary.
Yeah. When I look at it, it's not to say that you shouldn't do it. Just, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? That's the way I always look at it.
Yeah.
I thought about I tried to get out of this like 5 years ago and it didn't line up that I could. And now I think if they called me back and said, there's an opening, come work at the factory, I'd probably tell them to shove it.
Yeah.
So,
well, in all reality, a lot of those guys that commented on my posts there, about like you can't get away from it and stuff, it's probably pretty accurate. I mean, it's what I know. I'm good at it. How do you walk away from that? So it, as much as it frustrates me, I will say this: since starting my business and stuff, I definitely have gained a lot more of a passion for the industry. Before I started my business, I was telling all the young guys, my nephew and stuff, like, don't turn wrenches for a living, man. Like, it sucks. You're gonna spend a boatload of money doing it and stuff, but that's a pretty common way that a lot of guys in the industry that I talk to feel, though. And I don't know. It's all about perspective, I guess. And sometimes my perspective's there where it's like, yeah, like, I want to do everything I can to help better this industry and stuff. And then other days, like recently, it's like, you know what? F it, man. Like, I'm done. Like, let's go do something else. Let's get on to the next thing. But, ultimately, I didn't start this business to not try and do something with it. Mostly, like I said, I enjoy helping people. I enjoy fixing stuff. I enjoy problem solving. I think that stuff right there is the reason why a lot of guys get into this industry. And then,
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
Yep.
but it burns you out over time. So
Yeah,
it's tough
yeah,
figuring out how to get around that.
it is. I'm going to let you go. It's a late night, and we'll come back and chat about this another time, not too far away from now. And always, if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed or you're feeling like you're frustrated, just reach out to me, reach out to anybody in the group, and just
I think I
we'll
need to
talk
reach
you.
out to Zeb and see about how I need to get rich.
100%. He'll tell you. Zeb will be the kind of guy. He's a straight shooter. He'll tell you what, and then and that's it. And the thing, it's like everybody else is. I tell all these people is like, you can go to any one of the people in there and ask how. How do I get there? But you got to be willing to hear them.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You can't immediately. Nobody wants to be asked. Don't come and ask me how, and then argue with me that it can't work, because they're going to show you that it worked. Zeb will show you that it worked because he made it work.
That's one thing that amazed me about this industry. Starting my business and stuff, I never would have guessed that my idea in my mind, I came from fleet repair, that, other shops and stuff like that's competition. That's not the case. Like there's so much work to go around. Like it's unreal. And it's been incredible to me how many people are out there that are, doing the same thing, that are willing to help and stuff. And the group has been amazing for that. Like I said, I've done hours and hours of reading on there. But
we can't get all the work done. There's no two ways about it. We can't. So, I mean, yeah, nobody is your competition. Other people are people you want to learn from, what not to do and what to do. And I don't see them as competition anymore. I just see it as, it's like they may be doing some things that hurt the industry, but they're not my competition. I'm my own competition, and that's it. So I appreciate the chat. I'll let you go. So it's been a long night for both of us. And
absolutely.
All my love to Faith and the family. I think you're doing an amazing thing, and just keep that in mind, that you're where you're supposed to be, and we'll love you whether you move to a different avenue or whatever. But I think you're where you're supposed to be, and I think that it's frustrating, but just keep reaching out, man, and we'll get you through it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeff. It's great talking with you.
All right. For sure, buddy. We'll talk. Thanks, man. Right. Thanks, everybody. Yep.